Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Special Codes. I'm Taylor,
And I'm Nathan.
and today we would like to expand on something that we talked about in our episode on binary. In that episode, we talked about why computers use binary because of its stability, and we really want to talk about the integrity that binary has and relate that to us as humans.
And in order to do that, we really need to set a foundation of definitions. As Taylor and I were talking about integrity of systems and integrity of people when it comes to understanding binary and understanding people, we really felt like we needed to set a good definition because there are similarities, but there's also differences.
For computer systems and binary specifically, integrity refers to the idea that the signal that you receive is accurate, you understand what it is, and you don't mix it up.
And it happens every time, right? It's not just like, oh, this one signal. It happens every single time, right?
It's consistent as well. So, for example, every time you see the signal 101, you know what that means because it always means the one thing. There's no chance that you're going to mix that up. And each individual bit in that, such as 1 or a 0, you're not going to mix that up with the other because you only have two options there. You can't mix those up, and the signals always mean the same thing, and it's quite regular and consistent.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we were talking about when we were talking about systems, you started our conversation actually in this about how, because of the integrity and the consistency that is in binary, it's actually hard to kind of mess it up. You used an example. Do you want to kind of explain your example with how binary is used in space?
Sure, so this is kind of a fun one, and it might sort of dabble in sci-fi, which, hey, I'm game.
Me too. I'm totes down.
But the idea is that since binary is such a fundamental basic concept that is pretty much the basis for communication, and it has so much integrity that it can be used to send signals out into space or view signals coming from space in an attempt to find intelligent life. And the way that works is because, well, obviously, everything in nature's out in space is going to start sending signals out, like stars or pulsars or stuff like that. But you can, in some ways, find patterns in binary more easily than you can in other systems and determine where those patterns are. And we can also find patterns that we expect from natural phenomena and weed those out of what we get.
It's hard to just randomly choose stuff, right? In binary, like if it's on and off, the pattern really gives it its consistency, right?
Correct, it's the pattern. It's just two things on or off. How, in what way, in what ordering you put those in is what matters, because nature, you get a whole lot of noise and static and a whole
Mm.
lot of jumbled ones and zeros coming at you from various things. But there are also things out in nature that can give consistent patterns. However, when we find them and we can recognize what they are, we know what that pattern means and what it is. So it's really searching for a consistent, intelligent pattern that isn't just random noise and isn't consistent with anything else we already know of in nature.
Hmm. Cool. Well, and I think that's really important for us because when we talk about integrity of signals, and especially with computers, if it's consistent and it's communicates something, that's also a kind of intelligence that can be received. And so there's some really cool possibilities with that connect with the sci-fi. I kind of find that,
Correct.
but it's a little brain teaser.
Right now, I mean, we're not saying definitely aliens exist or anything. This is just something that we're looking for, that if we see, it can be an indication. Is it going to be proof if we find something like that? No. but it can be an indication of, hey, there's something over here. Let's look at it and see what it is. It's an engine for discovery.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important piece to this. And it really creates a system that is trustworthy, that because binary has such a great integrity to it, when something's received by it, it actually merits some further investigation, which is really important. Well, let's talk a little bit about human integrity. And as we're thinking about, we have this really awesome idea of like integrity with computers as communicating information and not getting it mixed up, not missing information every time. So then when we're talking about human integrity, it actually kind of has a little bit of a different tone to it. What are some things that come to mind for you when you hear the word integrity for humans?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is honesty and a steadfastness in what you believe. Because it's not just honesty on its own, because people say honesty and integrity is two different things, but I do believe honesty is part of integrity, but not the whole thing.
I think your steadfastness is actually really a good word to use too in there, because when we talk about integrity of humans, is looking this up online, one of the words that sticks out consistently about the definitions is this idea of wholeness, being whole as a person. And when we're thinking about integrity within a human being, what does it mean to be whole? I mean, okay, shoot, I'm losing an arm. I've lost an arm, so I'm no longer able to have integrity.
I don't think that's what that would mean.
No,
I mean,
I don't
in
think,
terms of physical integrity, maybe,
but when we talk about human integrity, I don't think we're talking about physical integrity. I think
right.
what we really mean, and especially when it comes to the wholeness of a person, they are who they are no matter where they are, right?
Right.
And I think that's the whole person. We're not having part of ourselves be different in one location and then another part of ourselves we automatically change. And when we think about integrity, wishy-washy is a word I use to describe like an antonym to integrity. What are some words that come to mind for you with antonyms?
Well, doing a Google search would net you words such as badness, evil, immorality, iniquity, sin, villainy, and wickedness. I think I like villainy in that list.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I like the immorality. Well, because too connected with this idea of wholeness, we have this idea of ethics and morals and your word of steadfastness. Well, so here's the thing though with villainy though. Okay, so here's one of the things that's really interesting about integrity. And this is where I really feel like the word integrity can also connect to villainy in a sense that if you are a villain and you are consistently a villain, would you still have integrity?
Well, if we define integrity the way that we defined it earlier, yes.
Because you have steadfastness. You are
Yes.
wholly evil.
So I would almost say, me personally, if we defined integrity the way that we defined it earlier, an antonym to that would be inconsistency.
I like see, and that's what I like better is I like the idea with it coming with integrity, even though morality does have an element to it. I think that when it comes to talking about a wholeness, I would say that even evil people or people who are villains have a certain integrity to who they are. They are wholly within them. Now, there are some people who are wishy-washy or inconsistent, or inconsistency is lack of integrity, or one of the better terms to use as an antonym to integrity, because when it comes to a person, when they are who they are everywhere they go, that's integrity.
You may
You
not
can't,
like it, but it is integrity.
and I think that's an important thing to say is you know that person's integrity. You know that they will do X, Y, and Z, and they will do it because that's who they are. They are wholly that person. Those are the whole decisions. And I think sometimes when we think about like integrity, we think about a person who has great morals or as a saint, or as oh. But I really want to challenge us to say integrity in the sense that we're using, especially connecting it to programming and binary, is really the idea of wholeness and consistency. You are who you are all the time. And I think that's important when we talk about ourselves. Let's think about a computer for a second, and you can help us kind of talk about this. What makes a system so good, or why is integrity so important in a computer or in a binary world?
Because if it wasn't consistent and you didn't know what it was sending all the time, you couldn't do anything.
What do you mean, like you couldn't do anything?
Well, because a computer is set to look for very specific patterns, and when it can't figure out what patterns it's being sent, it just doesn't do anything. If binary didn't have integrity, we wouldn't be using it in computers because a computer wouldn't know what to do with it. If the signal changes every time and it's supposed to just magically know what to do with it, that wouldn't work.
That doesn't sound like anything we do in this world. As humans, we never send mixed signals.
Won't ever.
Never. Like sarcasm.
Exactly.
Right. Well, and I think when it comes to people, taking that idea of integrity of systems, if a system is sound in a computer system, it's trustworthy. You can know, like, I'll push this button and something's going to happen, right?
The moment that changes, people will complain. I have stories upon stories of my programming days of making small changes to things, and our offices would get flooded with phone calls of, this isn't doing what it used to, or it's doing something different. There's something wrong here.
Does not compute. Well, and I think when we talk about ourselves as humans, I think that we as humans kind of tend to gravitate towards people who are integrity or who we can trust in, like our friends. I know this is kind of crazy, but Tyra Perry has a great little clip on YouTube. I can't remember what it's called, but it talks about, and it's specifically one of his Medea little excerpts that he does. But he talks about this idea of trees. People are trees, and our relationships with people are like roots, branches, and leaves. And some people are leaves in our lives. They come and they go, and they're wishy-washy. But if you put your full weight on a leaf, it's going to float away. And so we, in our relationships, as we're talking with people, it's not good, or we have been hurt by people because of their inconsistency in our lives. What Tyler Perry does so well in this little skit that he does, and he talks about relationships, is that we need people, though they are few and far between. There's not very many people that are roots in our lives that keep us stable, but they are the stability, the consistency in our lives. And with those roots, we ourselves gain integrity. We are able to be who we are. And I think that's really important for us, because if a system, and this is maybe something to talk about as we go into like maybe talking about cons, if a system is built upon inconsistency, what's the result?
Chaos.
When we as people build ourselves, when we live our lives as human beings with a foundation and a life of inconsistency, what usually is the result of that person? How do people like that turn out?
They don't go very far.
Right. It's chaos. You used a great word to talk about it with systems. And I think with people, we as well, not just experience chaos in our own lives, but we become chaos in the world. I think that's very dangerous for us. For instance, we were talking about data integrity for computers, and you specifically said that with integrity, it's really a lot to do with security for computers. Is that right?
There is a security component to systems integrity and data integrity in computers.
So when a computer lacks that integrity for the security purposes, what's the result, or what happens in that?
The issue and how it relates to integrity is that if you don't have much security, then someone else can come along and intercept or hack and change that signal. And therefore, that data signal or the data you're receiving doesn't have a very high integrity because you don't know if it's the actual data you're looking for or if it's consistent with what you need.
So what you're saying is that when a system is compromised, what is coming out and what is going in can't be trusted.
Correct. And it lacks integrity.
Right. And I think that's true with people. When we ourselves don't have consistency, when we try to say something and what we try to perceive the world to be, there's a lot of inconsistency. And just like with computers who have been compromised, we start to not use that, right?
Right.
And I think, like, as human beings, one of the words that's so, I feel like we kind of lost it in our society a little bit, that word integrity, of wholeness. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do here on this podcast, is bringing wholeness or stability to people. It's not our whole purpose, but it's a piece of it. Just like a computer is not all just about integrity. There's a ton of stuff in it. Just like a person is not all about integrity, but it's a huge part of what helps the system function.
Right.
It's a huge part of what helps us as human beings function. If we lack the consistency, if we lack the wholeness, things start to get a little funky in our lives.
It's very true.
So,
Same thing happens with computer systems. Lack integrity there, and
you get phone calls.
exactly.
I think there's a lot that's there. And so as we're moving forward with our conversations in later episodes, the word integrity is going to be really important for us to understand, because I think what we will talk about too, especially when it comes to the negative side of people, because, hey, guys, our world's not perfect. But I think that when we look at people, part of what we need to look at too is their integrity. Are they wholly this way? Not holy in the sense of like, oh, I mean like holy in the sense of wholeness. Are they wholly like this person? Or is there some inconsistencies that we see? Same with systems. Is there some inconsistencies? So we'll be using that as we go further in this special codes journey.
Should be fun.
Kind of some really exciting things, right?
Right.
Any last minute comments that you have on this?
I still like villainy as the antonym.
Why do you like villainy as the antonym?
I just get this image of the mustache twirly comic book villain.
I like it. The mustache twirly. I think of Maleficent, though she doesn't have the mustache twirly. She's got the little horn things going on.
She's got the horns on her head. She twirls him.
Yeah, that twirls around. So what would be an antonym to villainy then?
Hero.
Heroism.
Heroism.
So you can have integrity as a hero and as a villain as long as you're consistent with it.
Battle of integrity.
Yeah, but to see, even that's interesting though, because most heroes, well, true heroes lack integrity somewhere in their life, and all true villains lack integrity somewhere in their life. And so I think that there's some really great stuff that you can have with this conversation. Maybe mill it around at home. What does integrity mean to you? Leave a message in the comment. We'd like to hear what you think about integrity.
Let us know, and if we're wrong, let us know that too. But
Right.
just make sure your criticism is constructive.
Exactly. We'll have our third episode airing soon. June 14th, I believe.
Yes, the 14th.
June 14th. Check out our next episode, episode 3, on the second part of binary. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.